What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in to our podcast. I'm Paulie V, IFBB Pro. I'm joined by Will, one of my clients,
Hey, how you guys going?
and my doppelganger, Louie over here.
Paulie V from Wish.
So a bit of an impromptu podcast today. We're going to be chatting about our first times using PEDs, some questions around that I got from Instagram, and maybe some better ways we probably could have done it.
For sure.
And we'll also be talking about first time competing, our experiences around that, and again, some questions and maybe some better ways we could have done that. First of all, just want to say that any information on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
You're not a doctor. Cue the Greg Doucette. I'm not a doctor.
Advise your doctor before participating in these kinds of activities.
100%.
All right, now we got that out of the way. I'd be interested to hear you guys' first experience in using PEDs or steroids.
Let's start the show. Or you?
I'm natty, bro.
I still look natural, so. For me, the first time I would have dabbled into it was when I turned 29. Obviously, being in fitness, I've been training since I was 18. And even when I was 25, I probably lingered that thought of what would it be like. I think it stems from wanting to look good, feel good, and you always see on social media like these bigger guys, and then you automatically assume, oh, they must be on. And when I bought my first cycle, it was probably when COVID happened, and it still dwelled on my mind whether or not I wanted to make that leap, because it's a huge decision that you have to make and plan around. And that cycle was just sitting in my closet for like 6 months before I decided to do it. And it all was the standard 500 bro.
500 milligrams
yeah.
a week. That is typical bro cycle.
Yeah.
Was yours the same, Louis? Or?
Nah, bro. Nah.
Yeah?
Mine was pretty responsible in terms of that. Like, I don't know. Finish off though, will you?
Yeah, because obviously where you probably first start, if you ask the wrong people, if you're just going off your mate's advice, not like a proper coach or someone that's really experienced in it, I only just got that 500 test as a advice, as a base, and then I kind of just did it. And I just remember I was sitting there at the bench. My friend was just next to me. He's like, "Are you ready?" All ready to go. I'm like, "Fuck, here it's gonna happen." And then I was not natural anymore.
Yeah.
The needle
Should be
went in.
ass.
Yeah.
Let me put this needle in your ass.
And there was no going back from there. So, in terms of how it felt, I don't know if it was placebo, but it felt awesome. Like, I felt like muscle, because I became skinny fat at that point because of COVID, and I felt like the muscle came back on quick. Like, I was fuller, and the response was quite well. Obviously being at libido was actually skyrocketing to that point as well.
I think the first time you were on cycle, your libido is fucking hectic.
Yeah.
I remember those first couple of cycles, like, I just want to fuck everything. Hopefully my girlfriend doesn't listen to this.
You gotta cut that shit out.
This is before her time, so.
I don't know, bro. Like, my first, like, when I first went on, I'm a bit younger than obviously these two boys, these two gentlemen.
Thanks for reminding me.
But my first cycle was after I competed naturally when I was 22. So I probably started like 23 on my first cycle. And my first cycle was literally 150 milligrams of test and 25 milligrams of Provaro.
Responsible.
Like, literally, and to be honest, in all seriousness, I did not feel any different until my first big push. And to be honest, like, the decision behind that was when I competed ICN, I was saying to myself, if I do shit in the ICN and I don't do well and I don't place, or I don't feel like I belong there, I'm not going to jump on gear.
Did you have a coach when you started?
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not going to jump on gear, because I was like, bodybuilding, it's a genetic sport. Like, if you can't, in my head, if you can't look good as a natural, you're going to struggle as, you know, to me anyway, I think you're going to struggle as an enhanced guy. And for me, like, placing, you know, first in the juniors, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. But was more happy coming third with the men's open, third in men's classic. So I was like, okay, there's something there. I was a lot younger than all these guys as well by a lot, and I'd only really been training a year because during COVID I stopped training, and then I was like, okay, go back into training and compete. Did 2021 on October, I decided I was going to compete in October 2022. So like literally, I didn't even have an off season. Just literally just okay, clean things up and then bang, prep.
Did you did you guys wish you stayed natural for longer? Because you said you've been training like 4 years at that time.
Seriously, probably like from 25 onwards. When I finally actually tracked my volume in terms of training, dialed in my nutrition. Obviously, I still lived my lifestyle in terms of, you know, I go out to have fun, was a bit relaxed on my diet. So I was at that point where I felt like I was giving it my all in terms of my lifestyle. Obviously, I could have pushed my natty a little bit more, but in terms of what I was willing to give in terms of my lifestyle, I thought that was the right time to start. But if I was to do it a little bit different, then I definitely would have reached out to a coach, because I think there's a huge difference in terms of your why, because that's going to change when you start using it as well, especially when you just run that cycle at, say, 16 to 18 weeks, whatever it is. You're going to end up asking yourself these questions of what's next? Like, am I just relying on something to look a certain way? Those questions will come up. So I'm kind of wanted to find more reasons to be on, to be honest. What is the next goal for me? And that was competing. I think that's how I started. I knew nothing about bodybuilding, the sport. The only guy I knew was like C-Bum, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then, but then I fell in love with the sport, obviously. The grit, what it was like to get to that next extreme level in terms of discipline and what it actually takes to be stage ready. Obviously, I only got to like 10%, 9% body fat. That was something I could achieve myself all the time. But to get to that next level, to get bigger, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty common question, and a question that I actually got from Instagram. How long should you stay natural for before you think about jumping on?
I feel like it's down to the individual. Like I'm not going to demonize someone for saying, oh, they want to jump on at 21, because I fucking jumped on at like 23, so it's not much of a difference. But I think you have to have your head screwed on. You have to really understand what the side effects are, what you may not be able to do, and you've got to actually live the lifestyle. Like for me, at that, like before that competing, I'd only really taken bodybuilding seriously for maybe 2 years. The year that I was prepping and a little bit before that.
Yeah.
So once I knew I hit this cycle, is because I was like, okay, I really want to commit and throw the kitchen sink of bodybuilding, and your life revolves around it. Because I don't think people fully understand that it's not just getting the gear and jabbing yourself. It's, okay, first you need to know someone who's got the gear. So you need to find a source. Second thing is you need to have prophylactic measures. You're willing to take bloods 4 or 5 times a year. You know what I mean? Are you willing to test your blood pressure, 3 times a week in the off season? Are you willing to do your blood glucose? These are all things that you need to consider. And to be honest, at 17, at 18, you're going to be thinking, why do I want to take gear? Oh, I want to be big. It's not for me, that's not a good enough reason. It's like, okay, you want to be big, but at what cost? Are you willing to do all these things? And it's like, for me, if you're not willing to spend money on COQ10, TUDCA, NAC, pay money to get a blood test, don't even think about jabbing. Like, it's just not, it just doesn't make sense to me. It'd be like driving a car, but you're not wanting to wear a seatbelt, and if you get hit, you're like, oh, fuck, well, I didn't expect that.
Buy a car and then you don't want to service it.
Yeah, exactly. Correct. Pretty much. Yeah.
So some really good points there. I probably just want to rewind it just a little bit, and pretty much just summing up, I guess, what you said in my own words. I think it's a good idea to stay natural for quite some time. Definitely towards the point where like gains diminish, right? Like we all know when you first start training, those first couple of years, you get those newbie gains, you get some really good progress. And then depending on the individual, I'd say that probably slows down between 3 to 5 years of training, right? During that time, as you guys both mentioned, you should be maximizing your lifestyle, learn how to train properly, learn how to eat properly. You got to live that lifestyle, because when you start using gear, one, you're not going to make the most of it, but secondarily, it changes you. It changes like your choices in the future. It changes like physique, your body, your health. You need to be willing to commit to that. So if you haven't kind of found somewhat your ceiling naturally, I wouldn't be looking at starting.
Yeah. Also to touch base on that, I feel like, you know, when you watch YouTube videos back then, now it's so common to find like steroid videos or how to use PED safely. But back then it was more like you'd have all the pros. They'll be like, oh, stay as natural as long as you can. I think that more stems from you are putting things in your body that is potentially harming you as well. So why would you want to waste time still learning how to dial in your nutrition, your training during that time that you're on? I think it's more like if you're close to your natty limit, that should say that you're good at your nutrition, you know how to track your calories and macros, and you know how to train as well. So I think that's where it kind of stems from as well.
And you're prioritizing that rest and recovery as well, which is super,
100%.
super important. And like just to touch on Will's point, like I guess that's the kind of the problem with it now. A lot of people are very transparent, but the problem is when you're too transparent, you start to say numbers, say certain things, and people start to copy that. And then the cop out is now that a young person will be like, oh, I'm on gear, but I'm transparent. But, you know, I'm going and drinking on the weekend. I'm doing this and that. And it's like, well, you fully understand what you're doing. Like, shit, a lot of these kids are people jumping on gear. They don't even know if they want to have kids in the future.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's something you have to consider.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean?
That's the hardest thing, like particularly with like younger people, like a few things. One, you don't know where your life's going to take you, right? But not only that, is generally, and this, you know, this is against guys, but most men don't mature fully until they're probably mid-20s, right? So if you're like 20 years old, and all you're thinking about, I just want to get fucking massive, like you probably haven't thought about what you're going to do. And let's face it, most 20-year-olds at that time are doing exactly what you said, Louie. They're partying. They're doing all these other things that they shouldn't be doing if they're considering putting substances in their body, right?
Yeah. Like I look at myself now at 24, but even when I was competing 22, 23, I was very disciplined in terms of my lifestyle. Like not many, even now, like there's not many people that do what I do now.
Yeah.
That's why it's very hard to like associate with someone who's my age, because you're like, they're going out partying and I just can't, you know what I mean? That's not my life path, but that's a decision I've made. And I'm happy with and I enjoy, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's important as well, I guess. Yeah. To really consider your life rather than just, I just want to be big. I just want to be, you know, be jacked for the girls, because to be honest, girls don't really give a shit.
They
just
really
care
don't.
about how much money you make.
My missus doesn't like me when I'm shredded.
They're scared of you. But a good point there. What are some things that you guys feel like you now, obviously now a few years later, you feel like you overlooked before, like that you didn't think about when you started?
For sure. The costs involved, you know, when someone asks questions, or how much does it cost for a vial? You hear it's like, you know, $100 or $120. You're like, fuck, sweet, that's cheap. But when you actually plan out the whole timeline over a course of a whole year, the year after that, it costs a lot of money, especially when you start adding new things into the mix as well. I feel like that's something I overlooked in terms of costs, as well as the timeline as well. Like
like Louis said, like it's the cost of the gear, but then you have to look after your health.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off when people are willing to spend all this money on gear, but then they say they don't have money to check their health.
Yeah.
You know, getting the blood
100%.
works done, getting your echocardiogram, making sure that everything's right, checking your blood pressure. You know what I mean? Like everyone
simple.
on gear should have a blood pressure monitor at home, and it's less that what are they, $50, $100
$50,
for
yeah.
$100, yeah.
So cheap.
But so many people won't do it.
Yeah, it's I think cost, obviously, because I think people, they don't really understand how much it costs.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And also just having to know someone to get access to that. Like it's not as simple as fucking looking up online and that's it. Because then it's the quality you're getting as well. It's you need to know people. And it's like, if you're knowing someone who does that, obviously, you know, you're going to be around exposed to things that maybe you don't want to be exposed to. You know what I mean? So it's also understanding that as well. And then I mean, if you still live at home, it's that family component as well, because I'm pretty transparent with my family, so it's being transparent as well with usage and what you're doing, why you're doing it. That's important, I feel like, as well, and that's what people don't consider. You know what I mean?
Do you guys feel like it changed your temperament at all at any stage? Did you get any road rage or any shit like that?
It's kind of strange. Like when I started using just the test, or even when I was running different things during like an off-season period where I was trying to gain weight, the food was high. I felt like I was fine, a little bit snappier, but during prep, I felt like as the calories got obviously low, that's when everything kind of worked in unison. I was just more impatient, snappy, and very reactive at times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that was because you were hungry, or
Yeah, that's
was
what
it the
I mean.
PEDs?
I don't know if it was the PEDs.
Okay.
I feel like it was more because of the diet,
Yeah.
per se.
How about you, Louie?
I would say, like, in an off season, can't really say I had an off season, but in an off season when I was maybe pushing the food, you do feel a little bit more aggressive. Like you're on test, you're amplifying things. You are more aggressive with your training. You are more, but I notice in this prep, yes, the food's like getting a little bit lower. I'm a little bit more hungry, but I notice I'm a little bit more intense. But I don't know whether that's because of the gear, or because of how seriously I'm taking it because I'm taking gear.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I mean, it's probably a combination of both, but
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize that steroids actually increase your sympathetic drive. So it makes you more alert, but that over time actually can put you under stress, right? I'll be honest, I've definitely had some road rage in the past. I'm not gonna sit here like you boys. I'll admit, and that's I'm a bit older than you boys, and I've been doing this a lot longer than you guys, and there wasn't as much information back then. So I've trialed everything. I've used the high doses of a tren, and I can definitely say that makes me angry as a motherfucker. And I know for most people, tren makes them angry as well. I think these days we are a lot more educated and realize that we can get away with either not using tren. I don't use tren with any of my clients during the off season. It's primarily used for prep, and even so, it is a very small dosage. Whereas definitely in the past, it's been a love affair for a lot of people to use tren. High levels of testosterone as well is something that I've played around with, and did get some anger from that as well. And I think injecting protocols is something that people overlook as well. Some people inject infrequently. They're not on top of their pinning schedule. They can miss their injections, and therefore they get these big fluctuations in hormones, which can make them feel very snappy. So for sure, like roid rage is exaggerated, but I definitely feel like there are changes in temperament.
For sure.
Yep.
And that's one thing I would say I learned as well. It's injecting frequency.
Yeah.
Like when I was doing, a bit more in the off season, I would inject maybe twice a week.
Yeah.
And twice a week sounds like a lot, but in hindsight, when you break it out of your peaks and troughs, it's actually not that much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like you get lazy because you're like, fuck, in the off season I don't want to pin because it hurts. But you want to be, it's actually better to inject more on a more frequent basis to keep it even. Because and that's what I would notice. Like when I would come down to my my trough, I'd feel a little bit more moody. I'd feel a little bit more like edgy and like, it's weird, like edgy and anxious at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it doesn't help when I get into fucking 2 accidents straight away with my car, but like you do feel a little bit, and that's, I guess, the whole learning experience. Like
Sure.
the more you pin, that you actually want to be pinning more.
Yeah.
Just spreading it out so it's more even.
Me personally, I actually inject every single day. It sounds like annoying, but I find my levels a lot more stable when I do that. So just like a tiny bit every day.
Yeah.
I find that way better than twice a week.
That's probably how far the education's come, isn't it? Like, I mean, back 10, 15 years ago, you'd probably only inject twice a week.
Yeah.
But now it's like you've got people doing every single day. You've
Yeah.
got people doing every other day. It's quite normal. You know what I mean? Like I saw a cycle by James Hollingshead today, and it's like every other day. And people go, oh, that's a lot. But when you break it down, for his size, it's not that much. And the way he's doing it is very smart because he's never really hitting that trough. It's just like bang, 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 bang.
But it also kind of depends on how much you're taking as well.
Yeah, that
I
as
guess
well.
so, yeah.
Like if you're taking, say, 1 mil of tests per week, you could do that in 2 injections.
Yeah.
Because it's like 0.5 twice a week.
Yeah.
So you're not getting a huge increase. But if you're, you're starting to push things and maybe like you're doing 4 meals a week. And you're doing
The chest irons protocol.
you're doing 2 meals each injection. That's going to be a big increase and then a big fluctuation on the way down, right? We'd rather spread that out.
And when you look at it, the oil, the fucking pin 2 mil of oil.
Oh man,
That's quite I remember doing that at the start, like pinning 2.5 mil of oil.
Oh,
and I'm
when
just
you
like,
see that
would've
thing,
fucked.
bro, I did it in my shoulder. I've done it in my shoulder before, and I've thought, fuck, this can't be right. And I've like, nowadays, I look at, like, I would only put 0.5 mil on my shoulder now.
yeah,
Like, let alone 2.5. I'm just like,
Yeah,
fuck
no
that.
way.
yeah. When you actually visually see it, it's a huge, scary thought sometimes because I feel like even though I've been doing it probably 2 years now or a little bit longer, it never really feel that anxiety is still a little bit there to pin myself. I think everyone's different, obviously, but it's not enjoyable. That's something you should definitely consider. That it's every week that you'll be doing.
Yeah.
Have you guys used a lot of AIs in the past?
Without education, obviously, just with listen to your bros or take 500 tests and
Yeah.
AI. But when you get more scientific about it and get an actual coach, you want to avoid those things.
Completely agree. Like in my day,
Back in my day.
Back in my day.
AIs were like a part of your cycle. It was
Yeah.
like you take gear and AIs were just there because, and I think it's still true to this day, but definitely back then, estrogen was demonized. Did you guys feel that?
Well, me, not so much because I'm sort of the newer
Yeah.
age and I sort of did my bit of, and that's what I would say, just to quickly touch on this. If you're going to get into a cycle, do a bit of research on your own.
Do
Like,
some,
go
yeah, definitely.
go and look at like John Jewett, go and look at like Victor Black, go and look at these people, go and actually research what the fuck you're putting in your body. Because if you're not, you're just stupid. Like you need to do that. So for me, I actually always knew that you need estrogen.
Yeah.
Estrogen shouldn't be demonized. You need estrogen. And like people go, oh, well, like back then it's probably like, oh, let's push up the test. If you're getting a bit of side effects, we'll just add it in an AI.
Yeah,
Rather than
I
being
think
like,
that's what
actually,
it
let's
was.
lower the test. Let's
Yeah.
lower the thing that's aromatizing and just,
Well, I feel like for
Don't
me,
rely on
and
that.
I think maybe Will was the same. It was like your typical bro first
Yeah.
cycle is like 500 megs a test,
It's like if you get a bit watery, just
and
throw in
then
an AI.
like half a tab of AI
Yeah.
like 3 times a week.
Yeah.
I think that is the most typical
that
bodybuilding.com
was it.
cycle.
Yeah,
Like,
100%. That's the classic one.
yeah, I feel like everyone demonizes estrogen. It's the quote unquote female hormone, even though guys have it as well, and they think like you need to have that as low as possible. Do you guys reckon? Like, do you guys feel like that's what most people think? Because
I think, yeah, 100%. Like, they associate like that water retention with estrogen, and then if you get in that moon phase or puffiness, it's just like just throw in an AI, but not really understanding why. That makes
Yeah.
sense. You're just listening to someone's experience, really, and then they're probably just listening off to another bro without any like science backed
Well,
up behind it.
to give people a bit of a, like, not chuck people under the bus, it makes sense why they think that.
Yeah.
Testosterone, male hormone. Estrogen, female hormone. I don't want any estrogen in my body. I want to
Yeah.
be full of test. But people don't realize when you don't have estrogen in your body, what happens?
yeah,
I mean, your
there's so
your
many.
mood fluctuates. You don't feel good. You want to have you need to have estrogen in your body. It's like too much of one extreme is not
Yeah,
good.
it's either
And
black or white. They
yeah.
don't really look at the grey area.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they see the negatives of too high estrogen. Particularly like the gyno. Like every guy wants to avoid gyno, but they don't really understand that there's so many positive benefits of estrogen.
Yep.
Like, believe it or not, estrogen is the main regulator of your libido. Most people think it's testosterone, but it's not. It's actually estrogen, and estrogen is very protective of your organs. So it's neuroprotective, so your brain, kidneys, your liver. If you want to stay a healthy bodybuilder, you need to have healthy levels of estrogen. So like Louie said, we want to only use AIs reactively if we've designed our cycle poorly, and then we bring down the estrogen to a good range and then redesign the cycle so that we don't need AIs.
Yeah.
Again, AIs, what I call AIs is your first aid kit. You want to have it there just in case something happens, but you shouldn't be using it all the time.
The only thing I can think about using an AI would be to dry out in the last 3 weeks of a comp. And even then, depending on genetics, some might need it, some don't.
Exactly.
Like, I know me personally, and we had this conversation the other day, like, I asked you, do you reckon I'll need an AI? You said, have some on hand, but probably not.
Yeah, Louis
You know
dry
what I
as
mean?
fucking.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like, it's like,
Same.
it's like, you don't, it's not a, that's where it's so individual. Like, that's where I feel like when you do talk to someone, don't take their word for gospel. You got to remember what works for them, not work for you.
Yeah,
Very
we're all
individualized.
individualized.
Yeah.
So preferably speaking, we actually want to have estrogen as high as possible without any negative side effects. And in case the listeners don't know some of the negative side effects, that would be gyno, like I mentioned. Could be excess water retention, could be elevated blood pressure as well. So the number of like when you get your blood work done, you want this as high as possible without getting those side effects.
And in terms of, just a quick question on that, that's where I think genetics plays a part of it.
Yeah.
Like, being able to, how you process gear is so important. Like, there's some people who will take, 1 mil of test and their estrogen is like through the roof. And then some other people who will take 3-4 mil, they'll push and their estrogen's like, okay, it's climbing at an acceptable rate. You know what I mean? So that's where I think genetics is just, it's not just how you look on gear. It's how does your body actually process gear and partition that as well.
And that changes as well. It changes based on what level of body fat you are. Because if you're a fat little fucker, you're gonna. I didn't mean to look at you, Will.
I hope you're not looking at that.
Nah. So if you're holding extra body fat, you're gonna aromatize more.
Yeah.
So you could be using that same level of test, but be leaner, and you're gonna handle that well. It depends on what other androgens you're running as well. If you're running other like DHTs, for example, that can help how well you hold on to those effects. All right. So a question I got from one of my Instagram followers is, should you guys change your training if you start a cycle? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
No. Kind of what I said before, you should already know how to train prior to starting. You want to maximize the time that you are on cycle to make that progress. I think if you don't know how to train in terms of tracking your volume or knowing what exercises suit you the best that you connect well with, then you're just wasting your time. You're detrimenting your health possibly during that period just to figure that stuff out.
That was a nice answer from Will, but I'll give the harsher, more prep one. I hate when people say to me, oh, ever since I started taking gear, I'm training harder. What the fuck were you doing before? Like, if that's the reason why you're training hard, your priorities are wrong. Like, for me, I got into the gym for training. Like, I love training hard. I love pushing myself. Regardless of whether the gear is there or not, you should always be training hard. Like, now the measure of hard might not be smart, like in terms of, you might be doing too much volume, but you'd rather have someone tell you to slow down than you're not training hard enough and then you're going to use gear. For me, that doesn't make sense. And it's almost like the people like that will always think like, oh, because I'm using gear, I don't need to push as hard. You know what I mean? Versus if you have someone who fucking throws a kitchen sink at their training when they're natural, when they're on gear, it's just like everything gets amplified and they're not as reliant on it. And I notice the people like that don't tend to use as much, you know what I mean? Because they're so passionate about their training and they would push hard. Like I was telling Will before, like when we were in the health phase, I mean, I think I was running like TRT 150. I got up to squatting 5 plates on a Cybex for reps, 5 or 5.5, 6. Like when people saw that, they would always ask me, oh, how much you on? And I would tell them and they'd be like, you're lying. And I'm like, nah, bro, fuck, legit. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it's like you want to be always training hard. You should always be training hard, whether you're on gear or not.
I think people think like as soon as you start using that, like your training needs to change in order to suit the fact that you're on gear, and that's not the case. And like it may change like down the road, because if you're using gear at some point, you are definitely going to be stronger. You're going to get stronger quicker than if you were natural, and your recovery is probably going to be better. So once you start feeling those like symptoms, then you could change your training up a little bit, but you definitely don't just jab yourself in the ass and like, oh yeah, I changed my training program.
Yeah,
now.
the fundamentals
Saying
still
that,
stay the
though,
same.
That would come with training experience. Like if you're a natty and you've been training 6 years, you're going to be stronger than when you started. So inherently you will need less volume.
Yeah.
Like it is just more about intensity. But I feel like in general, people don't these days train hard. They shy away from what is hard and they'd much rather do something that is easy. Like when you look at it, how many people RDL, how many people deadlift in a gym these days? No one. But everyone's on this single arm pull down. You know what I mean? And like it's just like go stick to the fundamentals. Like that's one thing I feel like people just are more shy away from things that are hard, do things that are easy. Hence why they think like here's a magic pill. You take it, boom, I'm gonna grow. Not the case, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like it's cliche, but steroids are an enhancement to what you should be doing. You know, people think it's the magic pill, like you said. They can just take these fucking drugs and then they wake up tomorrow looking like fucking C-bum. We all know that's not the case. You know, it enhances what you do. If you take steroids and you train like shit, you eat like shit, you're not going to get much progress
unless you go
from
to Dubai, anabolic chicken. So just everyone go to Dubai.
All right, sweet. So we're coming on 35 minutes now talking about drugs. So I think we'll wrap this up with a couple of questions that I got from Instagram, and then onto the comp prep stuff. So first, I'd actually like to just, I guess, kind of conclude some better ways to go about your first cycle. So first of all, staying natural for as long as you can, trying to maximize your lifestyle, your training, your nutrition. If I had to give a number, 3 to 5 years training. From there, you would probably start on a low dose of testosterone, like Louie did, not like me. So a TRT level of testosterone, 150 milligrams, like Louie said. Run that for a period of time, maybe like 4 to 6 weeks. See how you go. Increase that by a little bit, probably talking like 50 to 100 milligrams per week. We'd want to walk this up slowly every 1 to 2 months. Find that ceiling where you are aromatizing the testosterone into estrogen, where you potentially will need an AI, and then we back down from there, and then we'll have a look at walking in a second compound. That is pretty much the first maybe year of PED usage, and then beyond that, obviously getting into an intermediate design, which is something that we could possibly have a look at in another podcast. All right, so I had a question which I was actually surprised about, which was female PEDs. So can't forget about you ladies, and I will just rattle this off pretty quickly. So beginner female PED usage would be clenbuterol, injectable L-carnitine, and growth hormone. So these things would be enough to help build muscle tissue without any masculine side effects. And then from there, you could have a look at doing a HRT level of testosterone. We're talking a beginning dose of 3 milligrams per week. And then after that, you could have a look at using some low-dose Anavar. We're talking probably like 2.5 milligrams per day. That should get a female pretty jacked at that point. Anything beyond that, you're probably looking at women's physique, women's bodybuilding, maybe a figure. So that would be a beginner female PED usage.
Sounds cheap as. To run.
Well, females actually very responsive to drugs. You know,
It's amazing when you hear that, like, the numbers are so much lower compared to like males, in terms of what they have to take in order to get to that level.
Oh, when you think about it, they don't really have testosterone in their body. So like
a little bit goes a long way.
yeah. Like that's really the least is most approach.
Scenario.
And that's, I mean, I guess you could say that overarching whatever, anything male or female, you know what I mean, or whatever.
And
The
it's
third
scary because,
category.
like, if a female asks their boyfriend who's on juice, he's probably just gonna give him like
500
a small version of what he's taking. But like, you know, for men, like I mentioned, a beginning dose is 150 milligrams, and for a woman, it's 3. You know,
crazy.
All right, so let's move on. We're going to talk about the first time we competed. How'd you guys get into it?
Pretty much what I was saying before, like my reason why I was kind of looking, where can I take my fitness journey next after, you know, doing a cycle myself. I wanted to find out what the next step would be because I had no direction in terms of my PED usage or in terms of my fitness goal. So I thought going to get myself a coach for the first time after 30 years of, you know, my life, I thought that was the right time to do it. It opened doors in terms of, you know, how I should be training, how I should be eating, taking it to that next level, and having that guidance in terms of PED usage. And I find that I'm going to probably come up with another question, but in terms of having your coach, like that is a huge stepping stone for anyone, no matter what the goal is, but also finding the right coach for you as well, because everyone's style is different and it's about you doing your research to find the right coach that suits you the most. And that's why I got into contest prep, because I want to take myself to that next level, see how I stack up against everyone else. And I think the misconception is you feel like you're doing really well, but you don't know how well you really are going because you only see yourself against yourself in the mirror. Whereas when you put your physique on stage against other people, it's a world of a difference. So it's nice to see where you actually stand and how you can improve on yourself that way as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Louie?
Well, when I started the gym when I was like 18, like 18th birthday, got it, and I was just used to muck around and all that. And I only really wanted to compete after watching heaps of Jay Cutler, you know, pumping iron, and I used to watch, you know, Callum Von Moga on bodybuilding.com. And at 20, I was like, okay, I want to compete when I'm 21. All right, I'll do the under 21s. And I was like, okay, I got my first coach. COVID happened, and I was like, fuck, can't do that. And then that's when I stopped. I like ended up being skinny fat, KFC every day. Yeah, I mean, like,
Dirty
and
bird.
then doing like, you know, going back to playing soccer and all that. And then in October 2022, I was like, okay, I want to give it another crack. Like, let's see what happens. Like, I fell out of love with soccer again, and I was like, oh, I want to see how I can compete and see what I can do. And it's almost like I wanted to prove to myself it's like a bucket list thing. I wanted to tick it off. At that point, I didn't really know if I wanted to do it in the future or whatever, but I was like, okay, let's do it. But then the more I got into it, the more I really loved it. I just enjoyed the lifestyle, enjoyed that grind again, you know what I mean? And that was with my second coach. And then when I competed when I was 23, it's like you got the bug. Like you get the bug, and the bug is so true. I remember everyone that I would speak to, they'd be like, you're going to get the bug. You're going to want to keep going. And for me, I actually was realistic though, because I actually looked at myself. I'll go, if I'm not competitive, I'm not going to put myself through that again, because it's the money, the time, you know what I mean? It's a big sacrifice. I'm like, if I'm not somewhat competitive, I'm not going to do it again. So in a way, luckily, or, you know, I was competitive. I think I was anyway, with what I brought and how little time frame I really had. And I was like, okay, the next step is IFBB. Okay, so I wanted to do an IFBB show. And I was like, I needed more time. I need to grow. I need to do this and that. And that's when, you know, that's the next step in the next 5 weeks. So,
Nice.
yeah.
So I actually never wanted to be a bodybuilder. I started training just wanted to improve my self-confidence. I actually started PTing people. I just wanted to look and feel good about myself.
Pull more bitches.
Sly dog.
I actually had a missus at that time. Yeah, so a few of the boys at the gym, the PTs at the gym were bodybuilders, and they actually competed, and I went to go watch them. And I was like, that looks cool, you know. And I feel the boys I was with kind of egging me on. They're like, Paul, you look better than these guys. Like, you should
nice.
try this. I was like, I actually competed out of a pure whim. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give this a crack. And then, like Louie said, I got the bug. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed how dedicated I needed to be. And it was almost a direct correlation of like how hard I worked equal the results I got. I was like, this is fucking awesome, you know? Going to the gym, I'm working my ass off, I'm getting bigger, I'm getting leaner. And then eventually I did my first show. I actually won my first show, and it's history.
That's what Paulie said there. That's a big one, because coming from a team sport, you can do everything you can within a team, but your team might not win because you've got 10 players that are shit. But at the end of the day, with bodybuilding, it's like you get out what you put in. And and like in life, that's just such a great motto for life. And that's why I loved it as well, 100%, because it's like no one tells you to do the cardio. No one's watching you do the cardio. No one's watching you do the steps. You can lie on your check-in. You can lie here. You can lie there. But it's like at the end of the day, come the end of 18 weeks, you know. Like,
yeah, for sure.
And you know who's done the work in the off season, and you know who hasn't done the work in the off season. And that's like, it's a real good thing for life. It's like delayed gratification, and that's why I love it. Yeah.
Well, what are some things that you guys sort of wish you knew before you start competing?
How hungry I'll be.
I think in terms of what I wish I knew was how hard it was going to get.
Yeah.
Obviously, being beach lean or just like 10% body fat, that is very achievable and maintainable. But just to get to that, you know, close to that 5% is a totally different story. And I think knowing your timeline is so important as well, making sure that you have a good runway in terms of your life. 'Cause everything that's going on in your life, like your work, your relationships, they all bleed into your prep and vice versa as well. So I was setting up a business during that time that wasn't doing well. I was going to move states at the end of the year. With this all in mind, I was doing prep at the same time. And, you know, I wasn't the best person to be around. And I wish I was more prepared for that. So definitely my advice, if you're starting prep, plan your timeline and how that is going to look. Obviously life is going to happen, but if you actually plan it out and see where you have that best runway to optimize your prep the best, I think that is the best approach to go.
Yeah, I would agree with Will. And also I think, like, for me, one thing that it's really hard, because the last time I prepped, I was working in a warehouse. I wasn't really doing, but now I'm PTing, people facing, seeing people all day, and it's your business, it's my business, and it's just like you're having to balance that with prep, being hungry, being tired, still doing everything, and that's where being organized is so important.
Yeah.
That's why, like, I would say, if you're going to do a prep, make sure you're incredibly organized. You don't want to do prep to become organized. You want to be organized to do the prep. Yeah, I mean, and whether it's a life organization, and I mean, last prep I was in a relationship, and it sort of ended towards the end of prep, about 4 or 5 weeks out. But I feel like, my next prep, if I've got a missus or whatever, it's balancing that. That's always so hard to balance, like relationships, and because you have to, one, find a partner, I think, that supports you, but understands how much you love it. You know what I mean? And but also you also need to dedicate the time to make them understand, but also say, hey, you're at the moment, this is a priority, but after prep, you are a priority. It's not like you're not a priority. It's just that this is a timeline on it, and after prep, we build that sort of thing. I think that's super important.
Yeah, prep's a full-time job, man. Like the hours you need to spend doing your cardio, training, your meal prep, making sure that you have enough sleep, your whole life needs to revolve around it. And you need to have your priorities in order. You need to have your life organized, and you need that support around you. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult.
And that's where it's like when I have a pro, I've always had this mentality in my head. It's like having a pro mindset without the pro card. Because I know a lot of people have got the pro card, but they don't have the pro mindset. Having a pro mindset is to balance life in general with everything, and being really on top of everything, rather than just being like, oh, no, I'm only going to do the prep. Everything else just goes out the window. I'm going to stop work 3-4 weeks out. It's like, hold on a second, like, it's not realistic.
And I find that what you were saying about being organized as well, and then how, you know, prep can affect other areas in your life. If you're not organized or find ways to stay organized, your focus is always going to be on prep. Like in my mind, I just kept thinking about prep. I wasn't as on point at my work. I wasn't on point with my relationship, and it was a little bit too late by that point when I was starting to get organized. Because fuck, my missus at the time, Jade, my fiance now, actually, she was just
Congrats.
like, thank you. It was probably like 2 weeks out of the show, and we got into this massive argument. I was very reactive, and she's like, you might have to finish this prep by yourself. Like, I'm going to move out back to my mum's house. And I was like, fuck, I didn't know how to respond to that. And then I was like, I might just have to, you know, be reactive. And I was like, fuck it, don't worry about it. Don't just get out of here. But I thought about it again, and then kind of just started diary journaling about how I was feeling each day, what I could have done better each day. And then that actually helped a lot. When you actually take accountability of how you're feeling, you'll become less reactive in that way. And I think that will help you out in the long run as well.
Yeah. And to touch on that, because I remember my last prep, I broke up with my girlfriend 4 or 5 weeks out, because I was just like, this is just too hard. And I wouldn't have been with her now anyway, because we just had two different mindsets. But you know, after prep finishes, you're done. I'm walking back to my car by yourself. You're sitting there, you've got all these medals. No one gives a fuck. No one cares. Once it's done, once you're off stage, no one gives a shit. People care about how you treat them in that last 12 weeks. Yeah.
You got to realize, like, it's obviously your choice to do prep. And, you know, as hard as it is, you can't punish the people around you. And it like bodybuilding, like everyone says it's selfish, and like it forces you to be selfish just because it just is so time consuming, and there's so many things that go in it. But you need to realize that it's a privilege to do what you do.
Oh yeah. And it's like, you know, I'm hungry, but fuck, there's people in Africa that are so much more hungry.
You're choosing to be hungry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's people who don't get to choose that, right?
Exactly.
100%. And I think that was probably why I wanted to do another prep. As crazy as it sounds, my missus is like, no way doing another one, right?
Yeah.
But it's just more of knowing. I find like people always say that the first prep is going to be the hardest because you don't know what to expect. But after doing it the first time, I feel like knowing how I was and how I could have carried myself like as a better athlete in general, I felt like that is why I want to do it again. Like I want to prove to myself I can hold myself accountable all the time and just be level-headed all the time. Not so much about, you know, the goal is shifted. I want to place top 3 in classic, but it's just more of how I hold myself as a person.
And I feel like mindset is a big one. Like I started working with someone, you know, I'm PTing someone who's a Reiki master. She's someone who's on chakras and all that. And I thought that was all bullshit. But doing a couple of sessions with her, just helping me be more centered, learning how to journal, learning how to not be so reactive. It's like, fuck, like I feel so much better. Because,
definitely.
you know, with bodybuilding, we're so in tune with our body. We'll go to a myotherapist if this is sore. We'll go to an osteo if this is sore. But what about here? Like what about in here and up here? We don't actually, you know, you can listen to David Goggins all you want. But, I mean, at the end of the day, knowing actually how to relax, knowing how to decompress, knowing how to write things down and journal, it's super important. You know, not just in bodybuilding, but in life in general.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that self-reflection, it helps you learn, right? Like Will said, learned that he could have done things a hell of a lot better. Yeah. But there's plenty of people who continue to prep and don't learn from it, and they're still the same arsehole. No one fucking likes them. Right? It's so true. But the more you do it, and hopefully the more you kind of reflect on it, the better you get at it. And you get at being able to do what you do and hopefully not let the rest of your life kind of suffer.
Yeah. And I guess it's just about balancing as well.
Yeah.
What other setbacks did you guys have during prep?
I think fatigue management. I think sometimes you just have to be very open with your coach when you're actually feeling really stressed. Sometimes I would just, you know, us guys, we just want to keep pushing because we're like, we can keep going. But I remember there was this one week where I couldn't even do my steps just because my legs were just cramping up so bad, and I had a funeral that day. And I remember I called you that day. It was a fucking shocker. But pretty much I parked the car to go to the funeral. needed to go to the toilet, and then I walked across the road, and then my legs just shut down, and then I just like was on my knees, like on the floor, and these Woolies trucks were coming by, and they're like, "Fuck, this guy can't get off the road." So they literally picked me up and carried me back to my car. But by this point, I'm busting. I've never pissed in a bottle before. So I get in the car, open up the door, and I'm trying to navigate how to pee in the bottle while I was sitting there while my legs are cramping like crazy. And it didn't end up well, just like flooded all over myself. And then it was like such a low. I felt so shit. Called my missus. I was like, I can't go to the funeral. Drove home, and then she helped me out, and then was very understanding. And then I sat on the couch, and I called Paulie up, and I was just like, I fucked up, you know. Can't get my steps in. My diet's kind of like all over the place. And I think I was only like 5 weeks out by that point. But just that honesty that you have, and you have that support as well. Like he was so nice, not nice, but like, you know, he was responsible about it.
Not nice.
But understanding, you know, like he understood it was my first time. It wasn't like an all in, all out mentality. And we still managed to pull through in the
And
end.
that's where it's important to have a good relationship with your coach, I guess. But for me, probably tearing my hamstring 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so I was doing an RDL. I was 1 week before deload, which is fucking just to the luck, but just tearing my hamstring. And I think, you know, it's more of a mental, that was so mental, because that night, the day before I did that was my birthday.
Yeah, I remember.
And I didn't have, you know, it's your birthday, you're meant to go out and have cake and enjoy and have fun, and everyone's asking you, what are you doing for your birthday? What are you doing? And it's like, oh, prep. And then the next day you tear your hammy. And I feel like that might have mentally fucked me up a little bit.
Yeah.
Why I was, you know, and then you tear your hammy on the Friday. I tore my hammy on a Friday. You know, I hate ice baths, but I was in the ice bath 10 minutes and then trying to just fix it. And then that night on Friday, your head starts spiraling. Like, am I going to compete? Do I really want this anymore? Fuck, I'm just going to fall off the diet. I remember looking at the Domino's menu for an hour and a half. Like, just staring at this Domino's menu going, fuck this shit. Like,
Yeah.
but then it's just like, you just have to almost push through. And that's where I was like, okay, from now on, nothing can fuck with me. Because I pushed through that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now on, like, and that is the moment I was like, this is what it takes to have a pro mindset.
Yeah.
You just deal with what you can. You take it day by day, and you just push as hard as you can with what you got. And I remember just going to the gym the next day, training. Okay, did my PRP, did what I need to do, going and training on Sunday, doing what I need to do, training upper body, and it's just like just ticking the boxes, still ticking the boxes, still ticking the boxes. That's the main thing. It was really challenging, but it was challenging for those 2 or 3 days. But once I overcome that, I was like, you know, nothing can fuck with me now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't think there's been a prep that I've done that something hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Like everything comes to test you, and you have to push through it. You have to take what's being given to you, and you can make a choice that you let it cripple you, or you just move on and do what you can at that moment in time. It's like Louie said, just about doing what you can, one step at a time, one day at a time, so that you can continue progressing forward.
And I think that's where it's important to have an open line of communication with your coach, because I remember just texting and speaking to Paulie a lot then, and it's just like, just do what you can. Just keep a level head. Don't think too far ahead, because I was thinking, fuck, bro. You know,
worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario, thinking, fuck, I've torn the cunt. Like, that's it. You know? But I remember Paulie just saying, look, bro, like, just like, let's get through this weekend. We'll see how we go. Just suss it out. Like, just see how you feel. And really super, like I said, understanding, and just almost like that's where it's almost like you need a friend. Like, it's almost like, okay, bro, it's okay. Like, you're going to be all right. And that's where the support network is so important. And that actually moment sort of made me switch in my mind going, fuck, life's so fragile. Like, prep's so fragile. It can be over in 1 minute. So it's like, appreciate it for what it is. You know, just take every good with every bad and just live through it, because you know, at the end of the 5 weeks, you can just stand there and be like, hey, I've gone through some
and it
fucking
goes by
bullshit.
so quick as well. Like,
oh yeah, so
like
quick.
I've done it and got on stage, and I was like, fuck, it's already over. Like, it happens so quick after putting in so much work. But so you should enjoy every moment of it, building up to it, whether or not you fucked up or not. You should still get up there. Don't let like anything stop you from getting up there, because that stage experience itself is something that you should, you know, take with you for your next prep as well.
And then only you can really get the most out of the experience. Like, one, being present, but second, like, being reflective of that journey that you went through, right? Like, only you and maybe your coach, but mainly you just know what you went through to get up there. So you should be fucking proud of like whatever you on
That's
that
why
stage.
even thinking about it now, I'm like, fuck, I get emotional.
Yeah.
'Cause you genuinely get emotional. Like I remember the end of last prep, I like was in the car and I was not crying, bawling my eyes out, but you're emotional.
Mm.
You're just thinking about everything you've gone through. You're thinking about all the ups, all the downs, and the same thing will be here. Win, lose, draw, it doesn't matter whether you come first or last. I got to stage, I bought my best package. Okay, what's next? But emotional, just sit in it. I mean, and it's like Paulie said, it's just got to be proud.
Yeah. Do it for you, man.
Yeah, leave no stone unturned.
Yeah. I think you gotta realize like for every person that's on stage, there's probably like another person that didn't make it there.
Yeah,
You know?
and people who like at the end of the day, so many people might judge someone for looking shit on stage. At the end of the day, you're in the arena, you're competing.
Yeah.
They're not. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like
Yeah,
it
it's
takes
so easy to
fucking
say.
balls to step. I remember, my posing, like I had a posing coach at the time, Callum. He goes, it takes balls to even step up on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let alone do well. So it's already an achievement to get up on stage. Just have the guts to do it. So it's like, just embrace it, man. Love it. Like, enjoy it. And that's where it's like, you should always enjoy what you do. And
Yeah. You need to enjoy that journey because, like we all said, you're on that stage for like 5-10 minutes, and if you're not enjoying the 20 or whatever weeks leading up to it, why are you doing what you're doing? All right. So just
the cheat meal after.
just rewinding a little bit because this was a question I got from Instagram. First of all, do you guys experience any sleep issues during?
Oh, plenty.
Yeah.
I messaged you. I think the worst time was I couldn't sleep for nearly 48 hours straight. I just could not fall asleep. I was hungry. Things were just keeping me up at night. Obviously, stress. You could take all the supplements you want.
Yeah.
Nothing was going to put me to sleep. And then I just remember, do I go train or not? I haven't even rested. But by that point, it's just like I have to go train. I have to still do my steps, regardless of sleep or not. And it didn't really get much better. Like, it'd still be, I get anxiety feeling like, oh, it's bedtime. Like, I have to go to sleep just because I knew I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. And then going through every night of, am I going to fall asleep tonight is just stressful. So that was probably the hard part about prep as well.
Yeah. Did you find anything that kind of helped? Or
I think definitely like the more natural kind of like ashwagandha that you recommended, 5-HTP helped as well. Just to help your mood. I think that helped me fall asleep. But then you always get that random, so many different factors in your life could cause you not to sleep, and that just kind of like enhances it.
All right, boys. I think we'll wrap this up. That was a really awesome podcast.
Beautiful.
I thought it was really good. Obviously, super basic level, I guess, but hopefully the viewers and the listeners got some good value to this. I was very surprised about some of the good questions that come through, but we kind of just skimmed over them really quickly. Hopefully you guys got some good things about that. We could potentially obviously do another one, maybe go a deep dive into this topic a little bit more. If you guys want a part 2, let us know in the comments. Otherwise, otherwise if you want some other topics we can discuss, also let us know in the comments section. Once again, thanks for listening, boys. It's been a pleasure.
Not too
Pleasure.
bad for 5 weeks out.
Yeah, you handled that well, man.
Louie's brain's actually working.
I know. Imagine him with food.
Oh, fuck. Oh, shit.
All right, guys.
Easy.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.